Welcome to episode 44 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda, Butterworth, and today we will continue with the story of King Oedipus, with the story of Oedipus at Colonus. After long wanderings through lands inhabited and waste, one evening Oedipus and Antigone came to a pleasant village set in a grove of tall trees. Nightingales flitted through the boughs, and the air stirred with their song. The blooms of the vine breathed fragrance, and the rough gray rocks were strewn across the region were half hidden by the foliage of olive and laurel. Even though Oedipus was blind, his other senses conveyed to him the loveliness of the scene, and from his daughter's description, he concluded that they must be in some holy place. The towers of a city were visible on the horizon, and Antigone, upon asking, had learned that these belonged to Athens. Weary of the day's journey, Oedipus seated himself on a stone, but a villager passing by bade him rise, since this was sacred earth, not to be profaned by mortal foot. Then he told the travelers that they were in Colonus, and had come to the grove of the all-seeing Eumenides, a name by which the Athenians honored the Furies. And now Oedipus knew that he had reached the goal of his wanderings, and that his tangled destinies would soon unravel themselves. His bearing gave the villager pause, and he decided not to drive the stranger from his resting place until he had told the king of the incident. Who is the ruler of your country?" Oedipus asked him, for he had been on the road so long that he no longer knew what went on in the world. "Have you not heard of Theseus, our noble and mighty king?" the villager asked in return. "Why, his fame has spread through all the land." "If your ruler has indeed so noble a spirit," Oedipus replied, "then be my messenger and beg him to come to this place. Tell him that for so small a favor I pledge him a great reward." "What is a blind man to offer a king?" said the peasant, and smiled at the stranger, half in pity, half in scorn. "And yet," he added thoughtfully, "were you not blind, the stateliness of your form and the majesty in your face would compel me to give you honor. And so I shall do as you say, and bear your request to the king and my fellow citizens. Remain here until I have done my errand. Then let the others decide if you may stay or you must go." When Oedipus was once more alone with Antigone, he rose, threw himself on the ground, and poured his heart out in fervent prayer to the Eumenides, the dread daughters of darkness and Mother Earth, who had chosen this quiet place for their habitation. "You, who inspire terror, and yet are merciful too," he prayed, "fulfill the words of Apollo. Show me the course my life is to take, and tell me whether I must suffer still more misery than I have already endured. Have pity upon me, O children of night. O city of Athens, have pity on the shadow of King Oedipus, which stands before you, for he himself is dead, even though he still breathes." They were not alone for long. The news of a blind man of noble bearing, who had sat down to rest in the groves of the Eumenides, where no mortal is allowed to set foot, had alarmed the village elders, and they came and gathered around him to hinder him from further desecration of holy ground. They were still more perturbed when it came plain that the blind man was pursued by fate, for they feared that the wrath of the gods would descend on them as well if they permitted one whom the immortals had branded with their displeasure to remain in this sacred place. They told him to leave on the instant. Oedipus implored them not to banish him from the goal of all his wanderings, which the voice of God had foretold. And Antigone, too, beset them with pleas. "If you have no compassion upon my father's gray hair," she said, "accept him for my sake, for the sake of one who was forsaken without any guilt on her part. Grant us what we have almost ceased to hope for. Grant us your favor." The villagers were still hesitating between pity for the strangers and fear of the Erinyes when Antigone saw a girl coming toward them. She was seated on a small horse, and her face was shaded by a hat such as travelers wear. A servant rode behind her. "It is my sister, Ismene," she cried in surprise and happiness. "She's bringing us news from home." And it was, indeed, the youngest child of King Oedipus, who dismounted and stood before them. She had left Thebes with one servant of proved loyalty, and had come to tell her father of conditions in the realm he had once ruled. It seemed that his sons were on the verge of a disaster which had been brought upon themselves. At first they had intended leaving the kingdom to Creon, their uncle, for the curse on their family loomed threateningly before them. But as the memory of their father faded, they regretted their earlier impulse and burned with lust for power and a king's glory and magnificence. Envy rose up between them. Polynices, invoking the rights of the eldest, took his turn at kingship first. But Eteocles, the younger, not content to alternate with him as he had suggested, goaded the people to insurrection and dethroned and banished his brother Polynices, and he had fled to Argos in the Peloponnesus, so rumor had it in Thebes. There he had married the daughter of King Adrastus, won friends and allies, and was threatening his native city with conquest and revenge. In the meantime, a new oracle had been proclaimed that the sons of King Oedipus could do nothing without their father, that if they had their welfare at heart, they must look for him and find him, living or dead. This was the news Ismene brought her father. The people of Colonus listened in amazement, and Oedipus rose to his full height. "So that is how it is?" he asked, and his blind face was radiant with kingly majesty. "They are asking help of an exile, of a beggar. Now that I am nothing, I am the one they desire." "Yes," said Ismene, and continued her tale. "Because of this oracle, our uncle Creon will be here soon. I was in great haste to get here before him, for he is out to talk you over, or to capture you, or to take you to the border of Thebes, so that your presence may fulfill the oracle in favor of himself and Eteocles, and yet not profane the city." "Who told you this?" asked her father. "Pilgrims on the way to Delphi." "And if I die near Thebes, will they bury me in Theban earth?" "No," answered the girl. "Your blood guilt will deter them." "Then they shall never have me," the old king declared in bitter resentment. "If my sons lust for power more than they love me, may the immortals keep alive their fatal enmity. And if judging of their feud rests with me, then he who now has the scepter in his hands shall not remain on the throne, nor shall he who is exiled ever see his native land again. Only my daughters are my true children. Let my guilt not be visited upon them. For them I implore the blessings of the gods. For them I ask your protection. Give them and me your help, and your city shall have gain and glory." And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back tomorrow with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.